Okay, it is now the top of the hour, so let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to today's webinar. Today we're going to be covering how you can improve the conversion power of your law firm website by building stronger calls to action. So thank you for taking the time to join us today. Just a few housekeeping matters before we get started. This webinar is being recorded and will be sent to you via email shortly after the presentation, so there's no need to take notes unless you'd like to do so. And in the event that you're having any issues with the audio or visual components of this webinar, please just use the raised hand feature in the GoToWebinar control panel, or you can type us a message and we'll try to get that resolved for you as quickly as possible. So my name is Drew Mancini, and I am the Digital Marketing Manager here at Lawylytics. I have a background as a marketing consultant for solos and small law firms in digital marketing practices as well as branding. And now I continue to enjoy helping to make marketing more accessible and enjoyable for attorneys by helping to create those resources that work to ultimately demystify successful marketing practices. So once a potential client lands on your law firm website, you really just have seconds to capture their attention. Website elements such as modern design and high quality written content work to catch the eye of your leads, but from there, how can your website communicate what they should do next? It's important to guide your potential clients throughout the entirety of their client journey from discovering your firm's website to hiring you. A strong attention-grabbing call to action, which we'll refer to as a CTA throughout this webinar, not only effectively guides your potential clients to their next step on their client journey, but it's going to have a significant impact on your website's conversion power. So today we're going to be going over the 3 ways you can write more effective CTAs on your law firm website, the top places to deliver your call to action throughout your website, and finally, how to diversify your call to action for more conversion power. I'm also excited to show you around our soon to be released instant website preview tool, where you can design a custom website preview with us in just a few clicks. So stick around to the end for that and we'll go through it together. Before we get into how you can start building better calls to action for your law firm website, let's first start with the purpose of having a call to action for attorneys specifically. So the call to action is intended to deliver an entire view to complete an action. So for lawyers, this is typically to get a potential client to contact you. It can be as simple as something that is just call now on your homepage to as complicated as an entire closing paragraph that is on a well-written blog post. It's also helpful to think of that call to action as your website's quote unquote final instruction to a potential client. So they've visited your website, they've checked out your practice areas, client testimonials, they've read about you on your attorney bio page, and they've gotten helpful information from your blog. And then that call to action is that, what do I do next? And what do I do to move this along? Like, I have this legal issue. What do I need to do to get to that next step? But wherever or whatever it is, the best call to action is going to invite your potential clients to take action. And in order to get started, you need to just have a clear idea of what your ultimate goal for that particular call to action is for your practice. And then that will guide all of your decisions moving forward. Oh, and I skipped ahead on accident, but now we're going to get into how you can start building those better calls to action for your website in the 3 steps. And that first step is to use action verbs in your call to action. So all of these words are for the purpose of guiding your potential clients to an action. An effective call to action is going to be attention grabbing. It's going to help potential clients access valuable information, and it's going to guide them to their next step. You should be offering them information that works to motivate them to take action, and also it should help to answer questions like, who should I call? Why should I call? What happens if I click? And ultimately, what's in this for me as a client? And then you also want to be specific and informative. You want to tell, or you want your call to action to tell the potential client several things, but in a very concise way. So for example, if you had an ebook that you want to encourage your potential clients, your web visitors to download directly from your website, you could say, click here to see our ebook. But even better, you could say something like, download our total guide to navigating your workers' comp case now. If you see the difference, the second call to action tells you that you have this guide available. It tells them the topic of the guide, and it tells them how exactly they're going to access it to learn more about that topic. And another example is if your firm has a newsletter, you don't want to just tell people to subscribe. You want to tell them how they would benefit from subscribing, what types of topics they might learn about in your newsletter, and then also just any other benefits of joining your mailing list. Maybe they'll be the first to know about a giveaway, or they'll be able to see happy clients or settlements or things like that. And then the last two bullets are just a couple of examples of action verbs that you might want to try, such as click here, download now, stay connected. And those are just all strong call to action words instead of just the simple call now. And then you can also pose your call to action as a question. Again, this just turns the attention back to the potential client and gets them thinking about themselves. Like, do I need more information? Am I ready to get started? Do you need help? By posing it as a question, you are helping to create or make the call to action about them, and you pretty much always want the call to action to be about them and how they will benefit and why they need to be motivated to take that next step. And then your next step of building a stronger call to action is to tell them what happens next. One of the best functions of your law firm website is its ability to help you with managing client expectations. A lot of the times, and you probably already know this, your clients are dealing with their very first legal issue, and they will likely need or else greatly appreciate a little bit of hand-holding. And when you're thinking of your call to action, this call to action should be no exception to this way you're going about handling your clients. So using your call to action to manage expectations might look something like communicating to a client what they can expect once they engage with you or that particular call to action. So for example, going back to our ebook example, if you have a call to action that is prompting a potential client to download your ebook or resource, it's a good idea to let them know if they will need to provide additional information to receive the download, like an email address. It seems like a small detail, but if you're giving all of the information available that you have to the potential client and everything seems very transparent, they are much more likely to engage with that call to action. And all of that is done by providing information about the process that the call to action is prompting the potential client to undergo with a clear explanation. So again, you don't want to use this space to bog them down with a ton of lengthy information. So even though you do need to tell them quite a few things, you do want to find a way to communicate what is happening next in a very concise manner. And then bringing it back to our ebook again, if you'll want to communicate to the potential client the overall sign-up process. So if they'll need to provide their email to receive the download, and then if the download is going to go straight to their computer or go to them in an email, if there's any additional steps that they'll need to take to receive the download, any of that is super important information that most potential clients are going to want to know beforehand before they just give you their information and click submit. Overall, what this communication is going to do for you is help build that trust with the potential client that's going to make them feel comfortable making that final step with you, which is your goal of the call to action in the first place, and that is hiring you as their attorney. So if you're helping to make them comfortable in that first step And throughout the other steps of their client journey, they're going to be that much more comfortable and that much more willing to hire you as their attorney. And as a last note on this, a big part of that trust building is going to be the actual follow through with your call to action, which is super important to consider throughout this entire process. You want to be absolutely sure that your law firm can deliver on the promise that you're making in your call to action. So for example, if your law firm website contact form says that you will return your calls, all your calls, within 30 minutes during normal business hours, you want to make sure that you actually have the infrastructure in place to do that. And if your contact form says you'll return calls within 10 minutes around the clock, you want to make sure that the infrastructure is also there to do that. Overall, your marketing might be working really well. You might have an influx of web visitors from Google or elsewhere, but with those call to actions, if you don't have the infrastructure to handle things like client intake, you might end up ultimately dropping the ball and losing out on business for something that should be totally avoidable. And if you do happen to have the infrastructure to provide those quick responses, or you're open 24/7 or something like that, something that is unique to maybe the typical way of business, it does make sense to indicate that on your call to action as well, because that something special can be hugely incentivizing to some potential clients. However, again, if you don't have the infrastructure in place to call someone back after that 5 minutes, 24 hours a day, or whatever you are indicating on your call to action, it can make sense to have a form that is more general, maybe that doesn't have a promise in it, but that still has a clear outcome. So you don't necessarily have to guarantee a response time or guarantee that someone will hear from you at a certain point, but you do want to let them know once they've submitted it, or maybe before they submit it, like, thank you, we've received this request and we will get back to you. And then number 3, your last step to building better calls to action for your website is to be super intentional with your design. And first, we're going to talk about color theory. And we've talked actually a bit about color theory in a past webinar, but basically color can have a very big impact on the feelings and behavior of your potential clients when they're on your website. There are certain psychologies associated with certain colors, such as blue being known to evoke feelings of trust, and red being known for being super useful for attracting attention. But regardless of the direction that you decide to take the colors of your website, which is going to be almost entirely dependent on your firm's branding, the most important thing is that those colors are working together cohesively, so that when you do introduce that call to action to a certain page, you can effectively create something that will stand out. So you need to know first what your firm's branding colors are, so that you can figure out how that call to action will either work cohesively with those colors or work to greatly contrast with those colors and pop out. For most branding, you will have a primary color with 1 to 2 complementary colors in your color palette. And for your calls to action, you might want to consider introducing a 4th color to your website that offers a little bit of visual contrast without overly affecting the readability of the page. So for example, you don't want to use neon yellow font on a neon pink button, even though that would, in theory, offer a significant contrast to the other colors on your website. So you want to have that palette to start with, maybe a 4th color that isn't wildly off the page of that existing color palette, but something that makes it a little bit different. And for many, when we think of a call to action, we think of that big red button, as that's what has traditionally caught our attention online or even elsewhere. But for the purpose of your law firm website, you might want to be a little bit more subtle with a color that differentiates itself from the rest of the page, but doesn't necessarily scream at your potential clients. And then you have size. So it's going to be largely determined by the page that the call to action happens to be on, the sizes. So for example, your homepage should feature a very prominent and probably large call to action that catches the attention of your potential clients if they're just happening to glance at your homepage. So say they're on your homepage for less than 3 seconds, can they spot your call to action? If not, there's a problem there. But for pages like your blog pages or your practice area pages, if you have a very large and prominent call to action, it might actually end up distracting from the written content of that page, which is what you really want people to pay attention to. So it might be a good idea to keep that call to action a little bit more subtle and keep the attention on the written content. And then you also want to tailor the call to action to your brand. So this kind of goes a bit beyond color. Your firm ultimately has a unique look and feel and vibe, and your call to action will work better if it works with your brand. So for example, if you're an estate planning practice that brands themselves as family friendly and uber compassionate, your homepage may function to keep focus on how to help or how you help your clients achieve a peace of mind. And you may opt for a more relaxed call to action, such as something super simple like contact us or learn more, and then also accompany it with colors that lean more towards a calming color palette and a comforting look rather than loud and agitating. So even though you want that call to action to stand out, if you had a super bright red button or that neon or something that doesn't really match with the overall impression you're trying to give of your firm, it's not really going to fit, and it might feel a little bit confusing and off-putting at the end of the day, even though it did catch their eye. And then on the other hand, if your approach to law is more about that protection of your client and you use more of an assertive approach to your branding, your call to action language might be something like speak with an attorney, because it's a bit more direct with your potential clients. So it's worth taking a step back and looking at the impression that you're trying to give off with your website, and your call to action needs to be cohesive with that beyond just color and the design, but also just in the language itself as well. And then lastly, you want to try multiple formats for your call to action. Just don't be afraid to use your forms on your website in more than one way. Not every call to action has to lead to a direct phone call. You can get your potential clients into your client journey pipeline in multiple different ways, like downloading a resource like our ebook example or subscribing to a newsletter. Overall, if you attempt to diversify your calls to action and kind of grab people in different ways, you are at the end of the day just increasing your chances of engaging with a potential client and moving them further down that client journey pipeline. And then next, let's talk about the best places that you should be putting those calls to action on your website. And the first most obvious place is that above the fold, which is at the top of your website. Those are typically reserved for click-to-call phone numbers, and they will be placed above where any content begins on the homepage or another page. In this day and age, most potential clients and web visitors are savvy enough to know that the top of any web page is going to be their kind of lifeline to returning back to the homepage or getting other information. So since people generally know the function of the top of a page, you want to make sure that you are capitalizing on that and also providing your click-to-call phone number or another similar call to action right up top, because people are going to likely engage with that part of your page above pretty much anything else. And the next place you want to have a call to action is inline on practice area pages and blog posts. So this just means like mixed in with your written content. If your potential client is interested in your written content and has found any of the information that you've provided helpful and informative, then the call to action that is in the conclusion of the piece, typically in that last paragraph of the piece, it can act as a super effective final push for them to take action. So they're reading through your page, they're getting comfortable with you as an expert in your field, they're getting more information on their case and thinking to themselves, hey, I kind of feel like I need to get a lawyer. This seems like a lot, seems complicated. And then you have right there at the ending of the piece and in your last paragraph, that call to action. It's going to be one of the most effective ways to incentivize potential clients to take that next step. And when you're crafting those inline call to action, you have a little bit more space and room to play compared to those quick calls to action that are elsewhere on your website, which also really helps them make them more effective because you get to be specific. You're also using that space to show what makes your firm unique. You're showing what makes your firm the best solution for that potential client's legal issue. And you can give them that direct next step for them to take while also painting a picture of how they will benefit from taking that next step. So you have a lot more room to really walk them through all of this and really make a case for why you're their best option for that legal issue. And then you also have these sidelines of select pages. So you don't want a call to action on every single page of your website, but I would say primarily on those blogs and practice area pages. And that's because not every potential client is visiting your website and directly landing on your homepage. Like in a perfect world, they would start there and then move elsewhere on your website. But in reality, if they're coming from Google or social media, they can come from a variety of different places and land almost anywhere on your website. So you want to make sure to have at least some calls to action on some pages on the sidebar. And it's also important to note that while these are super effective, they are most likely only going to appear on the sidebar when that potential client is on desktop. And if they're on mobile, it's going to probably jump to the footer of the page. So while it will likely still have the same effect, it's just important to note that when they're on desktop, that's when it'll be appearing correctly, and then otherwise it'll probably be in the footer. So it's still helpful to have, but slightly different impact visually overall. And then lastly, I just want to note that it is not a good idea to use pop-up windows of any sort on your law firm website. While they work for a lot of other industries, in your client's case, it's likely just going to cause them more stress, and it's also going to seem either a little annoying or maybe a little desperate. So your content on your website should be doing all of your heavy lifting and showing why you're the best attorney for the job. So you don't even need to really rely on those flashy gimmicks or features to draw the client in. You should just kind of let the website content speak for itself. You're already an amazing qualified attorney. They will be able to see that from your website content. All they really need is just the easiest way to reach out. They don't really need to be tricked into reaching out by something popping up in their face. Yeah. And then finally, let's talk about diversifying your calls to action for more conversion power. So in this slide, I've just included several different iterations of calls to action that you can try out on your website. I wanted to go over this with you because testing out several different calls to action is actually a very important part of being successful with your site's CTAs. You never know if a change to the wording, a color, the placement, or size or style might actually end up having a really big impact on your conversion power. And along the same vein of that, if it's not easy for you at present to play around with testing out different calls to action for your website, either due to the constraints of your site or some sort of pushback from the team that manages your website, this could be holding you back from tapping into the maximum conversion power of your website. With Analytics, it's super easy and quick to create and publish various calls to action throughout your website. Our technology is already equipped with all of the coding that you need to have those calls to action either above the fold or those click to call phone numbers in the headers and footers, those sideline calls to action and forms, as well as the inline calls to action. And because of this ultimate flexibility and ease, it's much more realistic for our members to pursue that trial and error journey that is often pretty necessary to ultimately land yourself in that spot of having a really, really effective conversion power through your site's call to actions. Every firm is unique, and therefore your calls to action should be unique. And then now I want to show you the tool that I mentioned at the beginning of our presentation. We haven't released it yet, but there's this new website preview design tool that we are working on, where it's going to allow you to totally customize a sample website to your brand and your colors, fonts, whatever, whatever works for your law firm, and then be able to see that website preview in real time. It's super cool. So I wanted to just go through that a little bit with you guys. So this is the builder, and say that you wanted to just kind of start from top to bottom with my brand. As you can see, it says sample law firm up top right now, but we'll call this Drew Law because my name is Drew, and update that with my name and email, and then my phone number. And as you saw, everything that I typed into my brand has been updated. I've got my phone number and my firm name. And then I want to also go into layout. So this one's a good layout, but I really like the layout guarantee. I think this is the one. Yeah. I really like this layout just because I think it's super modern and straightforward. So I can kind of get an idea of what my website is looking like a little bit now. I've got my legal services, but I'm not super happy with these pictures. I'm in Colorado personally, so I would really like my pictures to be scenic. Maybe Drew Law is an environmental law firm, and I just want my pictures to represent that. And of course, when you have your own website, you're going to pick all of your own pictures, but this is just to kind of give you an idea and play around. And then these colors are okay, but since I already have all of this nature, I would like to go with a nice blue, and then kind of see what that looks like for my firm. And then I also want to change this font. Okay, right now, maybe I will try the Tenor Sans and Roboto. And then with just those few steps, I've changed my branding, layout, colors. I can also take a look around and see what other pages of my site would look like. So once I start getting my blog, this is one of our calls to action that are in the sideline right here. This is what my footer might look like. I have my social media buttons right there. My contact page where potential clients can fill out a form, and I can just look around. I can also see what this might look like on mobile. If I wanted to get a good idea of this for myself and other pages, that's how it would look on mobile, all of the blue. But yeah, just wanted to show you guys around that a bit. We are releasing this pretty soon, within the next couple of weeks. If you're interested in taking a look for yourself, customizing your website preview to your branding. One thing I didn't do was upload my logo, which would go in this top left corner. So that would be really neat as well. And basically, if you're happy with this, at the end, all you would have to do is reach out to us. There's a contact us button here and here and here. And you could tell your support person to either just build it as is or say you want something similar or whatever. But I'm super excited about this feature. It's really cool and just fun to play around with. And just wanted to show you all that before we leave today. But overall, your firm's website is the foundation of your digital marketing strategy, and a high quality and modern website is going to be that first step to targeting your local and ideal client more efficiently and affordably, especially through those calls to action. We streamline the technical and digital marketing aspects of managing your firm's website, and our platform is super simple to use and it puts lawyers in control of their digital marketing. But overall, that is the end of our presentation today. If you have any questions about having a successful website with Lawlytics, or if you'd like to see a demo of the back end of the technology, because we didn't really go through that today, just please feel free to reach out to us using any of the methods that you see here. We have amazing product experts that can show you through the tool and get you comfortable with any of the technology. So yes, please get in touch if you are interested in seeing more of this. I will hold on for questions. If there are any, you can type them into the chat feature and I can answer those for you now, or reach out if anything comes up for you. But thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next time.